Welcome, traveler. Take a deep breath and let yourself settle into this moment. Tonight, we journey together to a place where time moves slowly, where ancient secrets rest beneath layers of volcanic ash and memory. There is no rush here, no urgency, only the gentle unfolding of a story that has waited thousands of years to be told. Close your eyes if you wish. Let your body sink into comfort. Feel the weight of the day lifting from your shoulders, dissolving like morning mist over still water. We begin our tale in the Ashlands, a vast territory of gray dunes and crystallized memories, where the remnants of the First Empire sleep beneath blankets of volcanic dust. This is a place of profound silence, where the wind whispers through ancient ruins, and the very earth remembers a time when humanity reached heights we can barely imagine today. The First Empire. Even the name carries weight, doesn't it? A civilization so advanced, so remarkable, that its technology seemed like magic to those who came after. And yet it fell, as all empires do. But what it left behind, that is where our story truly begins. Imagine the first rays of sunlight touching the horizon of the Ashlands. The light here is different, softer, filtered through particles of ancient dust that float perpetually in the air. Everything glows with a pearl-gray luminescence, as if the land itself is caught between dreaming and waking. In this liminal light, an old archaeologist named Theron makes his way across the dunes. His footsteps are slow, deliberate. There is wisdom in his pace. He has learned that the Ashlands reveal their secrets only to those patient enough to listen. Theron has spent 40 years studying the First Empire. 40 years of careful excavation, of brushing ash from fragments of the past, of piecing together a civilization from sherds and whispers. His hands are weathered, his hair silver as the ash itself, but his eyes still hold the wonder of a child discovering something new. This morning, something has called him to a particular valley. He cannot explain it, this intuition. Perhaps it is the way the light falls across a certain ridge. Or perhaps it is simply that after 40 years the land has begun to speak to him in a language older than words.
He walks through formations of petrified glass, remnants of the great cataclysm that buried the empire. These glass spires catch the dawn light and scatter it into rainbows that dance across the ash. Beautiful, haunting, a reminder that even destruction can create something lovely given enough time. Theron pauses at the edge of a crater he's never noticed before. Strange, he thinks. He knows this valley like the lines on his own palms, and yet here is something new. Or perhaps something old, newly revealed. The ash shifts constantly here, moved by winds and time, uncovering and recovering secrets in an endless dance. He descends carefully into the crater, his boots sliding slightly in the loose ash. And there, at the bottom, he sees it, a structure. Not stone, as most First Empire buildings were, but something else. Something that gleams beneath a thin layer of gray powder. His heart quickens, though his movements remain calm. Excitement, yes, but tempered with reverence. He kneels beside the structure and begins to brush away the ash with a soft, bristled tool. Stroke by stroke, he reveals a surface unlike anything he has encountered in 40 decades of study. It is smooth, impossibly smooth. And though it has been buried for millennia, it shows no signs of weathering or decay. The material seems to shift colors as he looks at it. Now bronze, now gold, now something that has no name in the modern palette. It is warm to the touch, though the morning air is cool. This is technology, he realizes. Actual, functioning technology from the First Empire. Not pottery, not tools, not the usual remnants of daily life. This is something from their heights, from the apex of their achievement. His hands tremble slightly as he continues to clear the ash. The structure is larger than he initially thought. It extends deeper into the ground, forming what appears to be an entrance, a doorway, sealed for thousands of years, waiting for this moment, this morning, this patient old man who has devoted his life to listening. Theron sits back on his heels and simply breathes. There is no rush. The doorway has waited this long. It can wait a few moments more while he processes what he has found. This is how discoveries should be met. With stillness, with gratitude, with the understanding that some moments deserve to be savored. The sun climbs higher. The Ashlands begin their subtle transformation from dawn gray to the pale silver of full morning. And Theron, alone in his crater, alone with his discovery, feels the weight of history and the lightness of wonder balanced perfectly on his shoulders. Later that day, after Theron has documented the site and called in his small team of trusted colleagues, they begin the delicate work of opening the entrance. It takes hours. The First Empire's seals were designed to last, and they have done their job well. But finally, as the sun begins its descent toward evening, the seal yields. A breath of air emerges from within, stale certainly, but carrying with it something else, a scent that none of them can quite name. It smells like ozone, like the air after lightning strikes, but with an undertone of something sweet and foreign. They wait. Patience has become their greatest tool. They let the sealed air mix with the atmosphere, let the pressure equalize, and then, with lanterns in hand, they enter.
The passage slopes downward, gentle as a sigh. The walls are made of the same color-shifting material as the entrance, and they emit a faint luminescence, just enough to see by, even without the lanterns. This light has been burning for thousands of years, drawing power from sources the modern world does not understand. Theron leads the way, his footsteps echoing softly in the corridor. Behind him, his colleagues follow in reverent silence. This is a cathedral, they understand, though not of any religion they know. This is a temple to knowledge, to achievement, to the heights of human capability. The passage opens into a chamber. Oh, but what a chamber it is! The space is vast, far larger than should be possible beneath this small ridge. The ceiling arches high above, supported by nothing they can see. And the walls are alive with light. Thousands upon thousands of crystals are embedded in every surface, each one glowing with soft, pulsing luminescence. They are arranged in patterns, geometric, mathematical, beautiful. They seem to flow like water frozen mid-cascade, like music made visible. The archive of whispers, Theron breathes, remembering legends from fragmented texts he'd read years ago. He had thought them metaphorical, poetic descriptions of lost libraries. But here it is, real and radiant and impossibly preserved. This is where the First Empire stored their knowledge. Not in books, those would have crumbled millennia ago. Not in scrolls or tablets or any medium that required physical preservation. They stored their knowledge in light, in crystal, in patterns of energy that have persisted across ages. Theron approaches the nearest wall. The crystals nearest to him pulse brighter, as if acknowledging his presence. He reaches out, hesitates, then gently places his palm against a cluster of amber-colored stones. And the room speaks. Not in words exactly, or rather, not only in words. The knowledge flows into his mind in layers, impressions, concepts, images, understanding. It is overwhelming and gentle. He sees the first empire at its height, cities of impossible beauty where buildings grew from living crystal and gardens floated in the air. He sees people, ancestors so distant they seem like another species entirely, though they share his eyes, his hands. He sees the first empire at its height, cities of impossible beauty, where buildings grew from living crystal and gardens floated in the air. He sees people, ancestors so distant they seem like another species entirely, though they share his eyes, his hands, his fundamental humanity. They were not superhuman, these people of the first empire. They were simply patient. They took the long view. They built for centuries, planned for millennia, and accumulated knowledge the way a river accumulates its journey to the sea, slowly, steadily, inevitably. Theron pulls his hand away, gasping slightly. Even that brief contact has filled his mind with more information than he can immediately process. His colleagues are touching other walls now, their faces reflecting the same wonder, the same gentle overwhelm. Slowly, he reminds them, his voice soft in the glowing chamber. Take it slowly. The knowledge isn't going anywhere. It's waited this long, we can take our time. They spend hours in the archive, though time becomes strange in this place. Sometimes Theron feels as though he's been here for minutes, sometimes for days. The crystals pulse their steady rhythms, patient as the stars. He learns about their energy systems, how they drew power from the movement of the earth itself, from the tidal forces of the moon, from temperature differentials and air currents, and the slow decay of certain stones. Free energy, renewable, endless. Not because they had discovered some miraculous breakthrough, but because they had perfected thousands of small efficiencies over centuries. He learns about their agriculture, how they coaxed the desert to bloom without exhausting it, working with the land's natural patterns rather than against them. Their crops were bred over generations to thrive in harsh conditions, to enrich rather than deplete the soil. He learns about their medicine, their mathematics, their music, their poetry. He learns that they were not cold, these technological masters. They valued art as highly as science, understanding that both were ways of knowing the world, of honoring existence. But most of all, he learns patience, because that is the deepest secret of the First Empire's technology. It was not built in a day, or a year, or even a lifetime. It was built by a culture that thought in terms of centuries, that planted trees they would never sit beneath, that began projects their descendants would complete. As night falls outside, though they cannot see it in the archive, Theron finally sits down on the smooth floor.
His mind is full, his heart is full. He is exhausted and exhilarated and at peace. Around him the crystals pulse their gentle light. The archive of whispers continues its patient vigil, holding the knowledge of a fallen empire, waiting for those who are ready to listen, slowly, carefully, with humility and wonder.
In the days that follow, Theron and his team map the archive. They discover that it extends far beyond that first chamber, branching into dozens of galleries, each devoted to a different field of knowledge. There is a hall of biological sciences, where crystalline structures hold the genetic memories of plants and animals, some extinct, some that still exist, little changed by the passage of ages. There is a gallery of astronomical records, where the movements of stars are tracked across millennia. The First Empire watched the sky with patience that makes modern astronomy seem hasty by comparison. They noted patterns that take tens of thousands of years to complete. But the deepest chamber, the one that requires descending through 3 levels of passages, is the chamber Theron comes to think of as the Chamber of Resonance. Here, the technology becomes less like the crystals above and more like, he struggles for words. It is like frozen music, like mathematics made tangible. The walls curve in patterns that hurt the eyes if looked at directly, but soothe the mind if perceived peripherally. In the center of the chamber stands what Theron calls a resonance engine, though he knows that name barely captures what it is. It is a structure of concentric rings, each one made of different materials, metals, stones, crystals, and substances he cannot identify. The rings rotate slowly, eternally, without friction or apparent power source.
As he watches the rings turn, he feels something shift in his awareness. The engine is not just moving, it is harmonizing. It is finding balance between opposing forces, creating stability through motion. He touches one of the outer rings, and understanding flows into him again. The resonance engines were the heart of First Empire technology. They were not power generators in the crude sense. They were harmonizers. They aligned different forms of energy: thermal, kinetic, electromagnetic, gravitational, and allowed them to flow in stable, self-sustaining patterns. The First Empire built large versions of these engines beneath their cities. The engines created fields of harmonized energy that powered everything within their radius. Buildings used this energy for light, for heating, for cooling, for countless applications.
But the engines required no fuel, produced no waste. They simply found the natural harmonies already present in the environment and amplified them, focused them, made them useful. Theron stands before the engine for a long time, watching the rings turn. It is hypnotic, peaceful. The motion is so smooth, it barely seems like motion at all. More like the breathing of the earth, slow and eternal. He thinks about the modern world's approach to energy, the frantic extraction, the burning, the exhausting of resources. The first empire had taken a different path entirely. They had not conquered nature. They had listened to it, learned its rhythms, and worked within them. One of his colleagues, a young woman named Sarah, joins him in the chamber. She has been studying the biological gallery, and her eyes still shine with the wonder of what she's learned. She grew their buildings, she says softly. Did you know that? They didn't construct them. They grew them from seed crystals over decades. The buildings were alive in a sense. They could heal themselves if damaged. They could adapt to changing conditions. Theron nods. And they never stopped growing, I imagine. Always evolving, always improving. A city that learned, an architecture that matured like a forest. They stand together in the chamber, watching the rings turn, feeling the subtle vibration in the air, a frequency so low it's felt rather than heard. It resonates in the chest, in the bones. It is like standing near a great bell after it's been struck, feeling the echo of its song through your entire body.
Why did it fall? Sarah asks after a while. If they had all this, how did the empire end? Theron has been wondering the same thing. The crystals hold vast knowledge, but they do not tell stories in the linear way humans think of narrative. He has found fragments, impressions, pieces of the truth. I think, he says slowly, that it fell because of time. Sarah looks at him, confused. Not catastrophe, he continues. Not war or plague or sudden disaster, or rather, not only those things. I think it fell because even the longest view eventually reaches its horizon. The first empire lasted for 2,000 years. Perhaps that was simply enough. Perhaps they had said what they came to say, achieved what they came to achieve. He gestures to the archive around them. They left this. They buried their knowledge beneath the ash, sealed it away where it would be preserved. That doesn't feel like a civilization fleeing in panic. It feels like closure, like someone carefully putting away their tools at the end of a long day's work. Sarah considers this. So the cataclysm, the volcanic eruptions, the ashfall, that wasn't the cause. That was just the end. Or the transformation, Theron suggests. Perhaps the people of the First Empire simply became something else, spread across the world, their technology forgotten, but their children persisting. We are their children, Sarah. We carry their curiosity, their patience, their capacity for wonder. Those things didn't die. They just went quiet for a while. The resonance engine turns. The chamber hums its deep, peaceful note. And Theron feels, perhaps for the first time in his life, completely at peace with mystery. He does not need to know everything. The gaps in understanding are not failures, they are invitations. Space for future discoveries, room for wonder.
As weeks turn into months, Theron's team begins to understand that the archive is not merely a repository. It is also a school. The way knowledge is stored in the crystals, layered, interconnected, experiential, means that learning from it is not like reading a book. It is like being taught by a patient teacher who adjusts their lessons to the student's pace and comprehension. Theron finds himself returning again and again to a particular gallery in the archive. He calls it the Garden of Protocols, though that name barely captures its essence. This chamber is different from the others. The crystals here are green and blue, the colors of growing things and water. And the knowledge they contain is not about machines or energy or mathematics. It is about life. The First Empire's greatest achievement, Theron comes to understand, was not their resonance engines or their living buildings or their crystalline archives. It was their understanding of ecology, their ability to create self-sustaining systems that grew more abundant over time rather than degrading. He places his hand on a cluster of emerald crystals, and the garden protocols unfold in his mind. The First Empire did not separate technology from nature. They saw them as the same thing, patterns of organization, flows of energy, systems seeking balance. A forest was technology. A coral reef was technology. And so, when they built their own systems, they built them to function like ecosystems. Their cities were designed as gardens. Buildings were nodes in a vast network of nutrient flows, water cycles, energy exchange. Waste from one system became food for another. Everything circulated. Nothing was truly discarded. They grew towers that cleaned the air, that pulled carbon from the atmosphere and converted it into soil. They designed streets that absorbed and filtered rainwater,
that cooled the city in summer and retained warmth in winter. Their transportation systems moved like blood through veins, efficient, responsive to need, never exhausting themselves.
But the true genius of the garden protocols was their temporal design. The first empire built their systems to improve with age. Modern technology, Theron reflects, tends toward entropy. Machines wear out, buildings deteriorate, systems become obsolete and must be replaced. But the first empire designed for the opposite trajectory. Their systems grew more complex, more efficient, more beautiful as time passed. A building might start simple, basic structure, basic function, but as decades passed, it would develop. Vines would grow along designed pathways, creating natural insulation. Colonies of beneficial insects would establish themselves in planned niches, providing pest control and pollination. Microorganisms in the walls would break down toxins and produce useful compounds. After a century, the building would be far more sophisticated than when it was completed. After 2 centuries, it would be a masterwork of integrated systems. The longer it stood, the better it functioned. This required an extraordinary shift in thinking. It required planning not just for decades, but for centuries. It required accepting that you would not see the full realization of what you built. The first empire understood this. They embraced it. They took joy in planting seeds they would never see flower. Theron withdraws his hand from the crystals, breathing deeply. Around him, the garden chamber glows with its gentle blue-green light. He thinks about his own world, his own time, the frantic pace of it, the quarterly reports, the 5-year plans that seem long-term, the expectation of immediate results. What would it take, he wonders, to think like the first empire? To plan for centuries, to build things meant to improve with age.
He imagines forests of living buildings, growing slowly across generations. He imagines cities that become more abundant as they mature, not more depleted. He imagines technology that works with natural patterns rather than against them, that becomes part of the ecosystem rather than dominating it. It seems impossible, but then he is standing in an archive that has functioned perfectly for thousands of years, powered by principles his world has forgotten. Perhaps impossible is simply a measure of patience not yet cultivated. Sarah finds him there as the day outside moves toward evening. She has been in the chamber of astronomical records, and she looks thoughtful. The first empire tracked a comet. They watched it for over 1,000 years, calculated its orbit with astonishing precision, and they left records of when it would return. When? Theron asks. 300 years from now, Sarah replies. They left a message for whoever would read it. They said, "Look to the sky on this day. Remember that we watched this same light. Remember that time connects us. Remember that patience is a form of love across generations." Theron feels tears prick his eyes, though he's not sure why. Perhaps because of the sheer audacity of reaching across 2,000 years to say hello. Perhaps because of the gentle reminder that they are not so different, the ancients and the moderns. They all looked at the same stars. They all wondered. They all hoped their work would matter. "They're still teaching us," Sarah says softly. "Even now, even from beneath the ash, they're teaching us patience." Theron nods. Around them, the garden of protocols glows its peaceful light, holding the secrets of systems designed to flourish across centuries, across millennia, waiting for a world ready to learn them, waiting with the infinite patience of stone and crystal and light.
There is one chamber in the archive that Theron avoids for a long time. He is not sure why. Each time he approaches the passage that leads to it, something makes him hesitate. Not fear exactly, something more like reverence. The sense that what lies beyond requires a particular state of mind, and he has not yet achieved it. But finally, on a quiet evening when the others have returned to their camp on the surface, Theron descends alone to the deepest level of the archive. The passage here is narrower, the light dimmer. The air has a quality of profound stillness. At the end of the passage is a chamber unlike any other in the archive. It is almost empty. Where other chambers are filled with crystals, with engines, with elaborate displays of preserved knowledge, this chamber contains only a single structure in its center. It is small, no larger than a person, and so simple in design it almost defies description. A column of dark stone, unadorned, unreflective. Around it, the chamber is bare stone, unlit, except for the faint luminescence that seems to emanate from the column itself. Theron approaches slowly. His footsteps echo in the emptiness. When he stands before the column, he realizes it is not quite dark. It absorbs light, but emits something else, something he can only call presence, weight, substance. He does what he has done in every other chamber. He reaches out and touches the stone, and in that moment, everything stops. Not physically. His heart still beats, his lungs still draw breath, but the constant chatter of his mind, the stream of thoughts, the planning, the remembering, the worrying, all of it ceases. For the first time in his life, Theron experiences true silence. It is not empty, this silence.
It is full. It is like standing in an infinite space that somehow feels intimate, close, protective. It is like being held by the universe itself. Slowly, understanding comes, not in words or images, but in direct knowing. This is a silence engine. The first empire, in all their technological advancement, had understood something profound. They had understood that the most valuable resource was not energy or food or materials. It was attention, clarity, the ability to perceive reality without the distortion of constant mental noise. And so they had developed technology specifically designed to create silence. The silence engines did not generate or transform or harmonize energy. They did something far more subtle and far more powerful. They created fields of coherence, spaces where the usual electromagnetic noise of the world quieted, where the constant vibrations of human anxiety and desire and fear could settle like sediment in still water. In the presence of a silence engine, the mind could finally rest, not sleep, but rest. Achieve the clarity that comes when you stop trying to achieve anything. The first empire had placed these engines throughout their cities, creating islands of peace in the flow of daily life. Theron understands now why he had avoided this chamber. Part of him had known what it contained and had been afraid, not of the technology itself, but of the silence, of stopping, of facing what might be found in the absence of distraction. But now that he is here, now that he has touched the engine and felt its field of coherence, he understands there was nothing to fear. The silence is not empty or cold. It is warm. It is welcoming. It is like coming home after a long journey to a place you didn't know existed. He has no idea how long he stands there, his hand on the dark stone, his mind empty and full at once. Time loses meaning in the silence, or perhaps time reveals its true meaning, not as something to be managed or overcome, but simply as the medium through which existence unfolds.
Eventually, minutes or hours later, he withdraws his hand. The silence remains, though softer now, like an echo of the engine's field, persisting in his own awareness. He realizes he can call it back, this silence. He does not need the engine. The engine was just a teacher, showing him something he had always carried within himself. He sits down on the stone floor of the chamber, his back against the wall, facing the silence engine.
And for the first time in 40 years of driven research, of endless curiosity, of constant questioning, Theron simply sits. He asks nothing. He seeks nothing. He is content to simply be in this deep chamber beneath the Ashlands, in the presence of technology designed not to do anything, but to allow everything to settle into its natural state. The ancients had understood something his world had forgotten. They had understood that progress is not only measured in what you build or discover or achieve. It is also measured in your capacity to be still, to pay attention, to perceive clearly. And they had built technology to support that understanding. Theron smiles in the darkness. Here, in this most advanced chamber of the most advanced civilization in human history, is a machine that does nothing, or rather, a machine that undoes, that strips away rather than adding, that creates space rather than filling it. It is perfect. It is exactly right. And Theron sits in the silence, feeling the gentle weight of centuries above him, the patient ash of the Ashlands, the slow turn of the earth, feeling himself as a brief note in a very long song, feeling content with that brevity, that small part in the vast composition. Outside, in the camp on the surface, his colleagues sleep. Above them, stars wheel across the sky, the same stars the First Empire watched, the same patterns, the same slow cosmic dance. A comet moves along its ordained path, 300 years from its appointment, with future eyes. And in the deep silence beneath the ash, Theron breathes, in, out, in, out. As simple and as complex as that, as profound and as ordinary. A human being sitting in the dark, learning patience from the stones. As you listen to this story, perhaps you have grown drowsy. Perhaps your breathing has slowed, matching the patient rhythms of the archive. This is good. This is exactly right. Let yourself sink deeper into rest now. Imagine yourself walking through the Ashlands, your footsteps slow and easy. The ash is soft beneath your feet, like walking on clouds. The light is gentle, pearl gray, soothing to tired eyes. You come to the entrance of the archive. The color-shifting surface welcomes you, warm under your hand. You descend the gentle slope deeper, deeper into the earth. But there is no fear here, only the comfort of being held by stone and time. The galleries open around you, each one glowing with its own soft light. You can visit whichever one calls to you. The chamber of resonance, with its turning rings and peaceful hum,